So I will just, okay, we're coming up to the hour now, so we'll kick off in a moment or so. I can see we've got the numbers still rising, which is pretty typical at this stage. We'll probably have people still coming in for the first sort of few minutes as we go through. Hopefully you're all in the right place with the title on the screen, From Hype to Habit, Building Real AI Fluency at Work. Okay, we're at the hour. Should we kick off?
Yes, I think we can.
Let's do it. Welcome, everybody, to From Hype to Habit, Building Real AI Fluency at Work. It's great to have you with us, joining us on this important topic. As we go through today, I just want to check a few things. If you can hear my voice clearly, just give me a thumbs up or give me an emoji or write in the chat that you can all hear me okay. We're getting yes, we can. That's brilliant. And if you can see my screen okay, again, thumbs up, all okay. And finally, just that we're all here ready to learn, have fun. I know we are going to be sharing some insights today, but we've got a lot of experts that are on the call today that we want to pull on your experience and leverage that. It's a chance to share some of that and for you. So please do use the chat as we go through today's session. We'll try to make it as interactive as possible as we go through. And for those that are first joining us on these sessions, just to give you a bit of an agenda for today, we're going to go through the webinar overview. We're also going to give people a bit of an introduction to KNOLSKAPE for those that don't know us. I know we have got some familiar names on the call as well that have joined some of our previous sessions. We're then going to dive into this topic around AI and future of work. What does this mean for our organizations as part of this? And then we're going to go into some of the solutioning around that, some of the answers, some of the things that we've been doing with organizations around our AI Academy overview. So we'll share some insight around that, and we'll also share some insight in terms of how we do that as well. And then we'll finish with some Q&A, but as I mentioned, please, all the way through, if you've got questions, pop them into the chat. We'll answer those as we go through as well. First off, welcome. It's great to be with you. I'm Jason Smith. I lead the growth for the UK, EU, and North American regions at KNOLSKAPE. And joining me is more of our expert that's going to be guiding us through today's session, Kiati. Welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Jason.
So, a bit about KNOLSKAPE, if you're new to what we do and who we are. We are one of the world's largest experiential learning technology companies. I'm going to emphasize two key things in that statement. One is around experiential, and that the reason for that is that's a big part in what we believe helps organizations, leaders, uh, shift from good content into actually applying new skills and behaviors as part of that. And the second part of that is technology. The way in which we do that largely is through our digital simulations, which we'll get to experience a little bit of today as well as we open one of those up. You can see that we've got a number of direct offices. I reside in the UK, in Oxfordshire, and Kathy, I know you are in Bangalore at the moment in India. We also have a number of different partners that operate in different countries to make sure that we are able to support clients globally in our delivery, along with a number of facilitators and coaches that support that as well. You can see on the left some of the clients that we have the pleasure and fortune to get to work with. We really share this because we are industry agnostic and size agnostic. You can see within that list there are technology, banking, finance, a whole host of different organizations that we get to work with. And also just to share some of the things that we're most proud of on the right-hand side and the accolades that we've got over the last few years as a growing organization. So, the anatomy of future-ready organizations, which is what we're all about. There's two ways in which we help organizations become future-ready. Firstly, around core transferable skills. This could be around leadership readiness, digital readiness, or culture readiness. We have a number of simulations, as I mentioned, the largest portfolio of simulations that focus on closing the gap in those behaviors and skills. We've also got to focus on organizational challenges as well. If you move on one more, Kathy, if that's there we go.
Sorry
Contextual
about that.
skill,
Yeah.
which is around organizational readiness, industry readiness, and role readiness. And these simulations tend to be custom built simulations for organizations and leaders who are looking to really address some of these areas for future readiness. I'm particularly proud of one in the bottom left. There you go, that Kathy is sharing there with our partners at the Agile Business Consortium, where we help build a agile project manager simulation to help become practitioners in that area of expertise. So, as we move on, we are quizzes at KNOLSKAPE. And so we're going to start off with a bit of a true or false. And so please use the chat as we go through this. AI will not replace humans, but those who use AI will replace those who don't. True or false? Let's see what people's answers are. Lots of trues coming through.
It's all truths.
All trues, no falses.
Yeah.
Anyone want to be brave and give a false?
It's a safe space, so you can tell us why you think this is false.
Patricia says, I hope it's true as I use it a lot.
I'm with you, Patricia.
Oh, I like this answer. Partially true. Still, people who don't use Excel are out there. That's interesting. Yeah, there are people that are
Yeah.
not using, some of the things that are out there.
Jason, what are your thoughts on whether this is true or false?
I mean, I'd feel bad if I said false, but yeah, no, I think true. I'm seeing this in roles already where people that
Mhm.
are using AI as part of their roles in their organizations are accelerating. I know we'll talk a little bit about that today, but yeah, you can really see the difference and that's split now.
I agree. I think it's true as well, and that's really at the crux of what we're doing with AI training and upskilling as well, right? It's to make sure that you're competent in using the tech and you have an advantage when you go out into the market.
Exactly that.
Right. Moving on. So just as we start, I want everyone to kind of look at the three marks that we have on the map. We've got the US, we've got Europe, and we've got Singapore. Um, Are all of you aware of the kind of regulations or policy changes that are happening with AI in the market? I'd be interested to understand from you if you've read these, maybe those signing in from Europe. Have you seen the new policy that came out in 2024? And the reason I ask is because it's becoming increasingly important to look at how these policies are changing. I think initially when they started, they were looking at compliance, right? It was very regulation heavy, but it's kind of shifted the focus where now we're looking at building capability and not just building compliance. Because AI isn't going anywhere, and I think it's only as strong as the systems and the people that we have using it. So we really want to equip the people to be able to use AI mindfully. It's kind of like with cybersecurity, right? You can have the strongest firewall in the world, but it takes one employee to click on one wrong email and everything can go down the drain. So I think we have to look at AI the same way. And it's increasingly important for people around the world as well to start looking at building capability for AI, because these policies and these compliances are just going to evolve from here. So you want to be up to date within your organization as you go through these processes with audits and just with doing business in these regions as well, right? Um, Moving on to lighter stuff, though, I think I also wanted to recap the evolution of AI and how AI as we know it right now really came about. So Jason, if you remember in late 2022, early 2023 is where we first heard about OpenAI and their first model that came out, and everyone was really curious. Cut to 2023, where everyone's a little concerned about the kind of output. There was a lot of phishing, there was fake images and videos. So there was a lot of concern in the market. And then 2024, we had regulations coming out. And my prediction for 2025 is that from this year onwards, I think the focus is going to be on being able to use it and harness its power, right? Whether that's personally or even in the workplace. So just from the audience as well, I'd like to hear from you. Where are you on the spectrum? I know it's mapped to a certain timeline, but you could still be curious, even though we're in 2025. You could still be concerned as well. Jason, what about you? When did you start using AI? When did you kind of get on the bandwagon?
I would say from an awareness point of view and a curiosity, I was probably in line with the late 2022, if I can remember back that far.
Mhm.
But the but yeah, that was my first curiosity coming across, the likes of ChatGPT or formats
Mhm.
at the time as that was coming out. Um, but yeah, that was mine. What about you, Kathy? Were you similar?
Yeah, I was an early adopter as well. I think as soon as GPT came out, I kind of started playing around with it. So I think both of us have had like a good 3 year lead time to kind of get up to speed and learn how to use it. But for those of us that haven't had that time, I think we also don't have the privilege to take that much time to now start using AI. I think it's really important to upskill as fast as possible, whether that's yourself or even your teams, your organizations, which is why capability becomes key moving forward.
I love that. Katie said started in 2022, but using daily since 2024. I think that shared with a lot of people, Katie. That's
Mhm.
sort of what we hear.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? I think the current ecosystem and the global landscape isn't asking you whether you like it. That's not the question. They're asking you whether
Yeah.
you can use it, whether you can control it, whether you can leverage it. And I think L&D specifically is in this very unique sweet spot where they get to orchestrate that change within their organizations, outside of the policy and process bit. So it's a very interesting time for L&D, in my opinion.
Yeah. I love that Paula said, new to it, but really excited about its capability. So we're going to have a mixture, as we often do, of sort
Mhm.
of all the way from awareness all the way through to those that are sort of using it quite regularly on the call as well.
Yeah, and I mean, do share your insights as well. I think we all use it differently, and um, kind of our companies also view it very differently. So all insights are welcome. But just to back what we just saw with a few different numbers, right? I think in the world, a lot of companies are now acknowledging that AI is going to transform their businesses. That number is 82% of all Fortune 500 companies. But Jason, for me, what stands out is that only 22% of these firms actually feel ready for AI-led transformation. And the key here is talent ready. And I know that you attend a lot of industry events, you speak to a lot of different partners and clients. With that 22% number, what's your sense with why that's happening or what's happening with building capability with AI?
I think there's a host of things, but I think one of the things that we typically hear, and I shared some data around this recently at the World of Learning, which was there's many organizations, CIOs that have invested a lot heavily in AI AI solutions or tools, resources inside their organizations for a number of reasons. And one of the stats that came out that really, shocked me was that 61% of those CIOs actually invested in those tools purely through fear of missing out and FOMO and not wanting to be left behind as an organization. But there's this catch up that I'm seeing that's happening now where organizations are sort of saying, hey, we've invested a lot in these tools and AI infrastructure, but we're not seeing the level of adoption and people using it in the way that we thought, or even seeing it impact certain areas of the business as part of that. So I think that's where you're seeing some of this lag. There's this catch up in organizations that are now trying to flip the script a little bit and focus on developing the people alongside it.
I agree. And I think Tony in the chat just brings out a very interesting point where he speaks about financial services and very heavily regulated industries and how I think they're having a harder time catching up because of the kind of red tape that you have around using AI. So my sense is that that number 22 is an outcome of the different industries that are in the mix. But in general, I think the amount of talent readiness that we have for AI is much lesser because a lot of us don't necessarily understand the extent to which it can change the work that we do or even help us do our work. And I think someone in the chat who just said that as well, I think.
Yeah, Al's just
Ali.
yeah. So Al's put, where do you guys see AI belonging? Which departments, marketing, strategy? I have a view on this, Kathy, but what would be your sense really quickly?
Um, I think it's across the board, honestly. I think just as someone who kind of started just using the chat to edit emails and get insights, then I moved to kind of analyzing data, and I'm in a place personally where I'm making AI automate tasks for me. So I think that the number of use cases that you have from a department standpoint isn't limited. I do think that the industry plays a little bit of a role there.
Yeah, I agree.
And to your point about tools, Jason, I think we have the tools. They're available, and a lot of us have different subscriptions. In fact, we were just speaking about this the other day, and you mentioned that you have so many subscriptions now. It's crazy, right? And I think organizations are also in the same place where they've got the tools, they've got the technology. But I do want to understand from you, what do you think is missing? Why is that not leading to change as fast as, companies would like or we would like?
I guess speaking to heads of learning, people, HR, talent functions, the biggest thing that I hear uh, where it's been a challenge is one, the level of confidence in people's capability to actually use AI in certain ways where we can use it, can't use it as part of that. I think there's a big awareness piece that's been done in many organizations. The challenge has been, how do we shift that into actually applying it and doing it, and creating these safe environments where actually people can actually test it and give it a go. I think that's where I'm seeing sort of the laggards there.
I agree. And we have a couple comments in the chat as well. Very interesting. There's people saying, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can use it for some things and not use it for other sensitive things. And I completely agree with you, John. And I think Tony's just asked us whether the AI we're using is homegrown platforms or we're allowing company data to sit outside of the company. So I think that's also a very big consideration,
Yeah.
which leads to that fear of misuse, right? So there are a lot of questions around the tech feasibility as well that I think we need to look at. But I think the way forward, Jason, in my opinion, is that we're not training enough. We're not talking about capability enough. And I don't think that a lot of organizations don't have a clear starting point when they speak about AI. And I'm not talking about the tech and dev teams specifically. I'm speaking about people like you and me, where there have to be role-based frameworks in how we use it, what we use it for, what kind of tools we have access to. So I think that's one piece. And then obviously the second one is, are we really equipping our people, not just with the tools, but with the know-how to kind of do that?
Yeah. So having that framework that you're talking about, Kathy, actually to be able to execute on it and do something with it.
Absolutely. And we're going to bring that up now. I'm really excited to share this. So before I bring this up, I do want to give a little bit of context to everyone on the call. So we, in KNOLSKAPE as well, we started our journey with AI in late 2022, early 2023. And since then, our products have largely been redefined by this technology and how we use it. So we kind of took that information, spoke to a lot of our clients as well, and came up with this fluency curve that we think really mimics what happens when organizations adopt AI, right? Where it happens in phases. You can't go from 0 to 100 overnight or even within a year. There are different phases where you're looking at just awareness. So your organization might just be experimenting with Gen AI, maybe your employees are using it. And phase two then moves into application, where you have certain teams that are now formalizing workflows and using AI within their processes. The third one is integration. So you have leaders really saying, okay, my whole department is going to use AI. That's the standard operating procedure that we're working with. And phase four, which I think is the goal, it's kind of the dream for a lot of us, is transformation, where not just your internal processes, but your company's way of doing business, the products, the services, the customer experience has really been transformed by it for the better. We have a poll coming up, but before we get into the poll, Jason, I did want to get your thoughts in seeing, when you speak with different clients and you kind of see where they are on their journey, where do you place most organizations within these phases? I know there's not one answer, but I'd still love to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see the poll of where people think they're at and their organizations are at on this sort of journey. And without trying to sway, and it could be very different. I don't know. We'll see from the results. But I would say phase two, one and two still seems to be where a lot of organizations that I speak to are at. Even from the awareness piece, I found organizations that are starting to do the integration are going back to
Mhm.
some of the awareness pieces that they've missed or thinking about. So I can see the polls come up. Let's see what others have come up with as well.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're already at phase four, do let us know what you're doing and how that's playing out for you, because
Yeah.
our understanding is that there's a few organizations in the world that have actually gotten there, and most of them actually make their own AI. So I would put Google and OpenAI in phase four, maybe a couple other conglomerates as well. But I am seeing increasingly that a lot of the answers are in phase two, which I understand. We're just now starting to see what's happening with it, what we can do with it.
Yeah, Momina has put phase four. I would love to hear, what certain things you're doing, or is there something that's really helped you get to that point as well? Manufacturing, hearing a lot. If again, depending on what industry you're in, it might depend largely where you sit on the.
Mhm.
So manufacturing is coming out as fairly low in phase one. So let's have a look. Yeah, you're right. Phase two tends to be seems to be the biggest, doesn't it? 58%.
Which, in my opinion, I think is great,
Yeah.
because we've moved past just knowing what it is and using it for personal use, and we're kind of exploring what we can do beyond that. And I think that's a great place to be. Um, I'm going to move on. And before I do that, I think to everyone in the audience, we do have a very quick survey that we're going to be sending out to you in the next week, that would help you really assess where your organization is within these phases, and which levers you can kind of use to move forward and where you might be lacking. And I think for L&D, it might be interesting to take that back and then have conversations with different business leaders and what we can do better, and also just have conversations with us, honestly, in case you feel like training capability is an issue that you're struggling with.
Okay. So
Right. Moving on. So now, Jason, what happens is, I think, from moving from phase one to phase two, then phase two to phase three, there's different components within a company's strategy that they can employ in order to make that shift.
mhm.
So what I also want to do is, for the audience today, just speak a little bit about what those different levers are, right? And you can see here on the left of your screen, there's people, there's process, there's technology, and there's strategy. And those are the four key areas that you kind of have to work on in order to make sure that you're moving phases. And what I've been seeing with a lot of our clients and a lot of different conversations that I'm having is that process, technology, and strategy is taken care of. And training and upskilling your people on AI is kind of like an afterthought. So, there's so many organizations where, and we've been on a few calls as well, where the partner would say, but the MD has said this is a mandate, the CEO is asking us to do this, so we got to do this.
Yeah.
But I mean, is that how we want to proceed? Is, I think, a question that all of us have to answer, right? And here, Jason, again, your thoughts on what kind of stops people from building fluency at scale and moving along that curve. What do you think is happening?
Well, so this might be a little controversial, but and again, thoughts in the chat. But I think if you look at process, technology, and strategy, they're
Mhm.
easier than people. Changing people and upskilling people is hard. It's difficult.
Yeah.
There's other things involved. I think it's easier to change process, technology, and strategy first. I'm going to go back to an old quote, Peter Drucker quote, which always said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And
Mhm.
I think that's the thing that you've got to be careful of. You can have, all the processes, the technology, and the intent, the strategic intent in place. But if you
Mhm.
haven't got the people that are leaning into it, adopting it, feeling ready and confident that they can do something with it, it's often falls down. I think that's what we're hearing a lot is the process, technology, and strategy is there. What's not quite there is, and it showed up in the figures right at the very beginning that you shared, is this capability building for the people to come along that journey.
I agree. And I feel like working backwards from strategy to people is not necessarily the right approach, right? Because even at a CXO level, if they're not trained and acquainted with the technology, its ramifications, its implications, your strategy itself will be very flawed. So I think for everybody on the call and all L&D folks, I think it's very important to go back and advocate for first helping people with AI, building capability with AI, and then building people, process, and technology and strategy along with that. And just on people, because we are in this industry, we do work in learning. Jason, I know that everyone's requirements for AI are also very different. For example, just between you and me, even though there's a little bit of an overlap in the work we do, we still have very different use cases. So do you think there's any merit in kind of contextualizing learning for AI to build that fluency?
I think contextualization in learning full stop is something that is really important.
Mhm.
There is
Yeah.
there's a lot of content out there, and we live in a world, especially with AI, right, where there is more and more content being produced. I think
Hmm.
the challenge is how do you add that content and the context together, which marries to enable the shift from knowing something or being aware of something into actually applying and doing it and practicing it
Hmm.
in your role, your domain, your industry is part of that. So I think it's becoming critical. I don't think it's even a nice to have now. Otherwise, you're leaving people in a sort of a blank space to try and connect the dots themselves, which can be quite difficult, especially with something that's still so new and at its infancy.
I agree. I agree with you. I think contextualization is key. I'm just going to go back to the chat and look at a couple comments again. So we're still speaking about the curve, and I think Tony asked us if there's a prevailing opinion on specific industries that are more suited to adopt AI earlier. My thoughts on this, and this might be a little subjective, is that I think certain technology companies will find it easier because it's their bread and butter almost. So ITES companies, I think, are going to find it easier. I think heavily regulated industries are going to find it harder. But Jason, your thoughts as well. I don't think it's industry specific. I think it's across the board where we need to see some sort of adoption, even if it's not full blown.
Yeah, I think you are finding probably organizations in the
Mhm.
Phase 4 that are in the technology space or apps. And someone mentioned it in the chat
Mhm.
earlier around shadow AI. AI has been
Mhm.
there, whether we have been, cognizant of it or not,
Yeah.
for a while, as part of that and being utilized. I think, and those organizations have really applied it. I think there are
Mhm.
some that are lagging slightly behind in that, and someone mentioned it again in the chat around the financial industry. And I think the regulations are creating some of that as well. Whether you're seeing fintech, start to really accelerate around it. So there's this real mix where larger organizations are finding it, I think, harder, and where you're seeing it being done is pockets of excellence. There might be areas of the organizations that are doing it really well, but others that are behind the curve, so to speak, in terms of that adoption.
I agree. I agree. And I think it's not a linear path for most organizations. It's not the same path. So it's really important to see what works for you. But I think, again, just coming back, I think building capability for people is key, irrespective of the industry, and where you are on that curve as well. Kenny also has just said that they're about to start a tech and AI program in their company for non-tech people. Congrats, Kenny. I think that's a good step. It's a very positive step in the right direction. For any recommendations, tips, I think that would be a full webinar in itself. But what we can do is we can reach out to you and have a conversation separately on how we think you can do this. But very encouraging to see that you're working on this already.
Yeah, I'll give one quick answer, Kenny, as a starting point though.
Mhm.
I would start with what's the area or problem you're looking to solve or the impact you're looking to make as an organization. If it's connected to results and work backwards, you're going to get far more buy-in and fluency with that. I think if it's left the other way around, it can get missed. So that would be my first piece that I've seen with organizations that do it well.
That's smart. I like that. But let's move on. We've spoken about the curve, we've spoken about what are the different levers, and I'm going to focus a little bit more on that people lever. We've also identified at KNOLSKAPE different skills that are required to really do well in this environment or to move on that fluency curve, right? And what I notice a lot, Jason, is that a lot of different professionals are kind of stuck on just one skill, which is the tool proficiency skill, right? Which is how do I use this tool? But then I think the full power of how you can harness AI and really leverage it comes from also incorporating the other four skills within any training program that you're doing within your organization.
I agree. I couldn't agree more.
And just from your experience when you're speaking with organizations on their learning needs for AI, is there any specific skill that stands out or skill gap that stands out that you think is important and needs to be addressed?
I think one big thing is that you often see, again, and I'm referring to conversations that I've had with organizations, those that are, I would say I'm seeing are doing it really well and accelerating on their journey, and others that are stalling a little bit or struggling. One of the key things I find is, you know, the leadership mandate comes out, as you described, Kathy, and we're hearing it a lot, which is the MD or the CEO said, hey, this is a strategic priority, we need to do it. And then people are sort of nodding their heads saying, I intellectually understand why this is important, but I haven't got anything around the how. And I think often
Yeah.
our senior leaders or execs are also in that sort of world where they're not fully equipped, if I can say it, bluntly. And so they're almost passing it on to other parts of the organization. And I think this has to be considered as two-way. Not only are you upskilling sort of bottom up, but you're also doing top down as well to create that level of adoption in each of these areas. I think the level of how we lead around AI and support our teams in adopting it as well as a big piece.
I agree, and I'd also like to hear from the audience if any of these skills stand out to you because you're working on it. Maybe you feel like you need to work on it. So we'd love to hear from you your thoughts on what kind of skills you're working on when you're working on building AI fluency and confidence with this technology within your organization.
Katie says all of these, which is
It's
good.
great.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great. Yeah, but it is tricky. You're right.
it is tricky. Yeah.
I see a lot of focusing around tool proficiency and less so than thinking about strategy and governance, which is really interesting.
Mhm.
That was a data
Yeah.
point that came out in our recent research, again, that shared at the World of Learning, where 80+% of organizations are saying, yes, this is a strategic need. Consumers, customers are also holding organizations to account of their use of AI, and yet
Mhm.
governance efficacy is still low. It's not even one of the top three key L&D initiatives within their leadership development. So I always find that interesting. There's a discrepancy there in terms of what we're saying and what we're doing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think in the chat as well, Maria agrees with you. I think there's a focus on tool proficiency. We have Gordon explaining why. I think it's good to know how to use the tool. I completely agree. I think that's the first step,
Yeah.
to just be acquainted with what the technology does, how to use it. But I think it's very important to build from there. And I think it should be an L&D mandate to look beyond to proficiency and move almost away from awareness to execution in the workplace. And we have Paul, who's speaking a little bit more about human AI collaboration. So that's a new one. Paul, if you can also share, Paula, sorry, if you can also share with us what you're doing around human AI collaboration, I think that would be very helpful. It'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I like what Michelle's saying. There's got to be leadership, sponsorship, and role modeling. I think that's
Mhm.
key for any. I mean, what we're ultimately talking about here, even with AI, is a level of behavioral change or skill development and application. And I think that happens best when you've got those champions and sponsors in the business starting to go first. Someone's got to take that first brave step.
Mhm. Yeah, and Gordon kind of reiterates that as well, saying, I think you need internal users to be champions and influencers. So outside of the leadership as well, it's very important to kind of identify people that do this well and then have them scale their influence.
Yeah.
Very interesting points, I think. So what I want to do next, Jason, is speak about how we look at AI training and building AI fluency with our partners, right? And what's happening increasingly when I speak with a lot of them before they start working with us is they've got these AI academies, they've got a lot of content and curriculum on AI, but all of it is e-learning or it's static or it's a one-off classroom session where the learner is, well, learning about it, but it kind of ends there. They're not really getting an opportunity to apply it. So what our learning solution for AI does differently, and I think does really well, is we sit down with you, we diagnose where your learners are, if it's across the organization, just within the department as well that you want to train. Then we help you build a foundation with the education content. I'm not saying that awareness is bad, but I think it needs to be supplemented. I think the third step, and this is key, and I think this is where the rubber really hits the road, is the experience bit, which is where I'm personally a very big fan of simulations because I think they work. They allow you to practice within a very safe simulated environment. So you're building confidence, you're removing fear. And of course, the last one is enable, where it's an ongoing effort. And tell me if you agree, Jason. I think a lot of organizations, they'll do one-off trainings. These could be slightly longer training formats as well, but then it kind of drops off. And there isn't any continuation to that training, even if it's experiential. What are your thoughts on this four-step process and whether companies are using it?
Well, again, I'll go back to maybe a few client stories because that might help bring it to life
Mhm.
a little bit in terms of where this is playing out. So, like many, we're hearing that people are stopping at the education piece, and there's been a lot of awareness that people can go through. I think the challenge with when you educate is it doesn't always give that level of confidence to then actually do something with it, and that's where the experience piece comes in. I think those that are even taking it further, and I've seen, so there's an organization I won't name, I think they may even be on the call, but where um, they're using each of these areas, and the enablement piece is actually they're tying it to key strategic projects inside the organization. So alongside the experience to build confidence, they're then saying, hey, now let's give people the tools and the resources to equip them actually in applying it to those projects. And a big part of that is, they want to demonstrate a level of ROI and impact into the business and using and leveraging AI and getting people to actually increase adoption rates of it, but also attach it to a business result or a level of impact. It's starting to really elevate their brand inside the organization. So I guess they're the ones that are doing it a little bit further along, maybe than some, but a lot still sort of remain in the educate space. I see.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think just to add on to what you said, before we move into the experiential bit and really look at what we're doing with AI, I think I do want to point out that a lot of us end up confusing the concepts of Gen AI and AI, right?
Yes.
Where Gen AI is the tools that we use one-off to get certain tasks done. So Gemini, for example, or Copilot, these are all Gen AI tools. Even you've got Sora, I think, and all these image generators, presentation makers. AI as a concept is much larger. It's a bigger umbrella. It's really looking at the implications at the work overall and how we're using it for the work overall. So, for example, I could write an email or generate a report using AI, but that would still be Gen AI. But the minute my organization has that integrated into the system and it's feeding into a larger ecosystem, that's when it becomes AI. And just for everyone on the call, I think it's important that people are trained on Gen AI, but also on AI, because that's where your fluency will come from. And that's where the kind of transformation that your leaders are asking for would really come from. So I think that's key in understanding. We do have a poll at this point where I just wanted to get a temp check with the audience and understand, what are you doing for training with AI? Is it nothing at all, one-off workshops? Do you have continuous learning? So we are seeing responses coming in.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where people are at on this. What's the score so far? Yeah, I think what we're seeing.
So it's largely a mix of one-off and functional enablement. Isn't too much continuous learning. There is a large part here that hasn't started training with AI yet. So I think for everyone
Interesting.
that kind of hasn't already, I think now would be a good time to start.
Yeah, like what Paul is saying in the chat with Kate. So it's essential that it's relevant to their day-to-day work. And I think that's the
Mhm.
interesting point, isn't it? In the experience and the enable, it's got to tie into our workflows as part of that. You
Mhm.
know, what does it help us achieve within it as an organization, as individuals as well? So it's a great point Paul is making there.
Yeah, and I think we can close the poll off and just see the results that we've gotten.
Yeah, let's see where we're at. Okay, that's interesting. Split between a mix of one-off and functional enablement, and also we haven't started AI training yet. So a lot of people on this call that are still very much at the starting point of building their AI journey, which is still great in itself, right? That there's an awareness that they're going to start on the journey, so to speak.
I agree. I think, like I said, I think 2025 is a good time to start. It's a good place to start. So those of you that have mandates that don't really know what to do with it, I think assess where you are, what your goals are, and then kind of start looking at training from there. And just make sure that it's intentional and you're doing something experiential and you're allowing people to practice and reflect back on what they're learning. With that, though, Jason, I did want to move into the simulations that we have for AI and just speak a little bit more about the three solutions that we're starting off with. So when we started looking at solutions for AI and started building our AI Academy, we realized that we didn't want it to be Gen AI specific because those tools are changing, it's evolving. And every few months, I think you need to kind of go back to the drawing board and see what you can do with it. But with your internal processes, I think it's a good place to start and then keep evolving from there. So we have three levels of simulation that we're looking at right now. We've got level 1, which is AI Edge, where we look at empowering employees. So it's any professional that's starting their AI journey. So you could be a CXO that has little knowledge about how AI impacts your work, AI impacts your organization, and you could still do the simulation and it would give you a very good sense of where you are, where you need to be. The next one is called AI Elevate. Now, this is for first-time managers, team leaders, anyone that's managing a team where AI is being used or is being implemented. So you're looking at coaching, you're looking at enablement, you're looking at advising people on how to use it, really taking on the role of a mid-level leader in an organization that's going through that transformation process, or is going to start that transformation process. And the last one, this one's really complex, where it looks at department heads, functional leaders, anyone that's working in strategy, where the simulation itself speaks a lot about transformation and governance using AI and how they can drive that within their organizations. And these simulations right now are obviously role and industry agnostic, but we get a lot of requests from different partners on customizing the different scenarios in this, the kind of questions that the simulation throws at you, the conversations that you're having to meet their learners. So I think that's the beauty with experiential learning, where you can really contextualize it to the role, to the domain, to the learner itself. And then, of course, there's different learner levels that they can take up. But Jason, I know that you've spoken with a lot of clients. You're working with clients that have seen and experienced these simulations. Is there anything that stands out to you, or any feedback that comes your way about these simulations that you'd like to share with everyone?
Well, I think so. Why simulations? Going back to that point, I think one, there's a different level of engagement. It's active in nature in terms of the learning rather than passive. If you think about most of the time, it's listening to an expert in front. I mean, we're doing it now, right? You're listening to experts in front of the room that are talking about key concepts, but it's only until you actually do it and you apply it and have an active learning experience where you can start to connect the dots and build that confidence. That's certainly something that we're seeing as part of it. We run one the other day at an organization, one of our partners actually, and one of the things, they run it with their senior leaders. And although it was senior leaders, they actually started at AI Edge because they wanted to build that level of foundation. And
Mm,
what was good there is people weren't really sure where their level of capability and awareness was in AI.
mhm.
Um, and that actually gave them some personal feedback. So they got to realize, actually, I'm either further ahead than I thought I was, or actually some that thought they were
Yeah.
further ahead were behind. So that was interesting as well in terms of what we're seeing.
I agree. And I think we've talked a lot about the frameworks, the skills, the methodology. But what I want to do now is bring up one of the simulations. And in the interest of time, we're not getting everyone to play it this time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the context for the simulation. Now, this is AI Elevates. It's the one for managers where you're coaching your team, you're working with your team on AI. Once I set the context, I'm going to move into the simulation. And once I move into the simulation, I would really love the audience to give me answers in the chat. And those are the answers that I'm going to put into the simulation. So it's not me playing it, it's all of us playing it together. And post that, if you do want to play it yourself, if you want to check what this would look like for your team, then we're happy to send you licenses and walk you through it. But today, I think I'd love to just have you all participate in some way or form when I bring up the simulation experience. So allow me a minute. I'm just going to bring up my browser.
And I'll keep an eye on the chat whilst you do that, Kathy, so we can see any responses.
Absolutely.
Momina, I know you've asked a great question around AI. Can it be linked to Power BI and perhaps based on the score received, present the solution to the user, how he or she should respond? I need to understand exactly what you mean by that, but I'll respond to that at the end as well as we go through.
Absolutely. So to set the context for the simulation, I'm going to be using wireframe. So bear with me, and then we're going to move into the simulation itself. So you'll see that the tab is open. Now with this specific simulation.
But there's still a lot of work ahead of us because many employees are still rooted in traditional ways of working. Shifting their mindsets will be key to success. It's not just about introducing new tools, but about inspiring confidence, building trust, and showcasing AI as a driver of growth. To make this shift successful, AI must be employed responsibly with clear, measurable results that demonstrate its value. You'll be a key part of this transformation by
And we're going
creating an
transcript as
environment where
well.
AI is embraced as a powerful tool to achieve meaningful operational goals, equipping your team with essential.
So what we do with all of our simulations is we first set context, right? This could be a fictional organization, it could be any industry. So we give you a sense of what you're going to be working towards within the simulation. So that's what you just saw, the introduction to the simulation itself. Then we give you an org chart. So within the simulation, you'll notice you're getting emails, you're getting onto Zoom calls, you're getting messages from different team members. So we do try and make it as interactive as possible, and your team members are all AI driven. So we're also training a data set to make sure that we're nudging you in the right direction to give you an answer, to get an answer from you.
Measures your ability to enable the organization's transformation to being AI first. The choices you make will determine your progress on each of these objectives. AI capability development. Your ability to develop the team's AI capabilities while ensuring ethical considerations contributes to your AI capability development score. Aim to achieve 80% on this metric. AI implementation impact. Your ability to drive change and
Sorry about
optimize
that.
the impact of AI adoption contributes to your AI.
So the simulation itself has two goals, right? We're looking at capability development, and we're looking at AI implementation. So I'm assuming we have a little bit of a sense of what this simulation does. I'm very quickly going to move into the simulation now. And what I did was I skipped the first scenario because it was kind of setting context. You were listening to the CEO of this fictional organization and setting expectations with the team. And I moved into a slightly more interesting scenario that we're going to be playing today. Again, everyone, once you have the scenario in front of you, please do give us answers in the chat. And there's no right or wrong answer. You can give me a very wrong answer. We can put that in the chat as well within the simulation and see what it says, right? So just really for us to test it and get a sense. So this is a message that's coming in from...
Hi, Quinn. Our AI recruitment tool has processed over 2,000 resumes for our senior developer positions and provided a short list of 20 candidates. This is a reduction factor of 100, and at 1/5 the time it would have taken us. I am not completely sure, but it looks like 95% of selected candidates are from the 3 universities we usually recruit from. Shall we proceed with interviewing them?
So here it is. The context is that your team's working on recruitment. So that's one scenario that we could potentially play out. And the AI has essentially removed 95% of the candidates. There isn't too much diversity. Now, to everyone in the audience, let's say you have a team member that's asking you this. How would you respond? What would your response be? Should they proceed with interviewing them? And if not, what can this team member, Max, go back and do to make sure that the recruitment process is it's sound and it's not necessarily leaving people out?
I love that. Jay saying bias will always be a factor when we're using AI, and that's something we talk about in some of the learning and the simulations, isn't it? As part of that. And this is a classic case, okay? Mariana saying, no, we should be checking the criteria used and have a human check.
All right, I'm gonna look at the answers as well. And I'd say, okay, so I like Charlotte's answer. She said, don't proceed if they used a prompt to run these CVs through, then check how it was set up.
Let's try that.
Okay. Now, I can't copy paste it. The simulation doesn't allow it, so you'll have to bear with me while I type it out.
Is that for all those that are using ChatGPT to do the answers?
Okay. Let's put my answer in. I'm going to send it out. Let's see what Max has to say. Deborah, we will connect with you on the last.
Understanding the criteria used for selection is crucial. Did the process take into account potential biases, such as relying heavily on university affiliation?
All right, everyone else, what would you say for this? What would your response be?
So Tanya's put, can we ask what criteria cause the others to be no's and then check? So we could do that.
Okay.
Here we use and why, okay? Similar
Okay.
answers.
Similar answers. Criteria. Oh, it's too short. I'm also going to take Jay's answer and put that in, I think.
Yeah, could it be from earlier prompts? Let's try that.
Yes.
It's important to verify the prompts and criteria programmed into the system, as these directly influence AI's decision-making. This will ensure transparency and fairness in the recruitment process.
But what is the point of using AI if we cannot trust its results due to the possibility of biases?
Quinn, isn't there a way to mitigate these biases and get better, more equitable, and bias-free results from AI?
That's the thing, right? I think it's now asking you what you can do to make this better and if there's any use around it. I think a lot of managers would also have questions like this coming up. Again, in the audience, if you can give me one last answer that I can put into the simulation, I can show you how it responds, and then we can move to Q&A. All right, so Charlotte has given us an answer, so has Jay. Mariana's answer is a little different from everyone else's, so I'm going to combine them and I'm going to put them in.
It's interesting, isn't it, though, because that's often what you see as people interpret their own learning and awareness of
Yeah.
AI, and applying it in different situations and contexts, might apply it very differently. One of the things that is happening with some of the clients that we're working with, after this, everyone gets their unique report. Kathy, I'm sure you were going to share that, but I just thought I'd jump in at this point. But what it's caused is lots of conversation, discussion on the back end around how it's utilized, because there's still lots of debate that sort of fuels how we use it in our organizations. So let's see what response
Continuous
we get.
training and correction are indeed vital. How do you envision addressing biases specifically during this training to ensure fairness in AI-driven decisions?
So that's the thing, Jason. It doesn't take no for an answer. So till you haven't met the brief, it's going to keep pushing you, because I've played the simulation a few times, and Lucas and Max, those are the two team members on the simulation. They give me new questions every time, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know how to answer this. But I'm going to stop now in the interest of time, and I'm just going to bring up the presentation again, and very quickly go through the report that we have. So we can close out with Q&A. I'm just being mindful of time. But for those of you that are on the call that have participated, if you do want a demo access, you want to see the simulations, the other ones as well, Edge and Leader, I think do reach out to us and we can help you with it. So once you're done with the simulation, you get a report, something like this. It's much longer. I've taken a few screenshots and I've put them here. So you get an overall score. We break down the competencies that are being tested. We give you a deep dive into those competencies. And then for those of you that wanted, there's also communication analysis in terms of whether what you've learned was communicated effectively within the simulation. So it is very detailed. This happens for the learner itself. It happens at a group level. So we can do it for teams. We can do it for the whole organization. And this happens across simulations. So it really does help you benchmark where you are. Just another point before we move on, I think the scenario you saw was a recruitment and training scenario, but we can change that. So you can have things around sales, marketing as well, depending on what your learners and your organizations require.
Also, this is valuable continuous development. It really is, Paula. And Katie's raised a good question. Will it correct people if they provide answers that are not the best with regard to AI use?
It will, it will. So Jason, this specific simulation, I played it a few times, and a bunch of times I said, hey, I don't think there's an issue with the bias. Why don't you screen the candidates? And the simulation kept asking me, are you sure? Are you sure? We don't do this. It's not the company's policy to hire like this. Are you sure? Right. So I think it does nudge you in the right direction, and it really doesn't give up. The only caveat there is that you have 45 minutes to do it. So you do have to get it right at some point or it times out. And Devlin has said, can you redo the simulation to get a better score? You can.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing in the example I shared previously, Devin. So the organization is doing it again 3 to 6 months later to see how some of the movement of the dial on those key skills and behaviors and its application is being used. And then they're also tying it to some of the projects, the metrics inside the organization as well. Again, because the key here is L&D are wanting to more and more now demonstrate impact and ROI and value to the organization as part of this. So it's a great comment. You could even do it a third time if you wanted to as well. In some cases, organizations do that.
And with that, I think we can close out the webinar. I would love to hear from you if you have any thoughts, any comments, any feedback. We have a feedback poll that's come up as well. So please do answer that. We'd love to hear from you and bring something that's of interest to you for the next webinar as well. In fact, for each of our subsequent webinars, the topics honestly do come from the feedback that we get.
And whilst you're doing that, we're open to any questions that you might have. We'll keep tracking the questions in the chat now, which I can see some coming through. Thanks, Tony. Thank you, Katie, Charlotte, Mariana. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone that joined in. I know everyone's busy.
So someone's put, that's a good question. Kieran has put, is there video and speech? Yes, there is a real mixture inside our simulations. It's one thing that we look at. So on some of them, you are actually giving verbal responses as well as part of that. So some written, some verbal. Some of them have more guardrails, so there's more multiple choice tree type workings within that that you can see. Thank you, Manuel. So would you mind, so Momin has put, would you mind showing the tool you use to develop these simulations, or is it an internal developed tool? It is an internal developed tool. It's built on our proprietary platform called Genie. As part of that allows us to create simulations at pace. Momin, if you'd like to learn about that and also how you can create custom simulations using that platform, happy to engage with you and talk you through that. It's a bit of a more of a larger conversation, but happy to do that if that's helpful.
Jason, we do have one more question from Momina in the Q&A, where she's asked us about assessing the capabilities of the team, coaching them on the gaps. And she's asking if AI can suggest what coaching styles to use or what the way forward is. Momina, we actually have a tool for that. So you should reach out for us. We have an AI coach that we've been building internally. So we'd love to share that with you. I think it does give you very detailed advice on what you can do within your workplace without having to worry about going to a peer or HR maybe and getting support. And I think the next one is how to add motivation so they achieve their KPIs and hence improve their improvement. Oh, that's a layered question. But yeah. But I think what we can do, Jason, is I think we're a little bit over time. So I am going to thank everyone for joining in. Do watch out. We will be sending you an email in the next week where you will get access to a survey that helps you understand where your company is in their journey on implementing AI and adopting AI. I think that will really help those of you that haven't started training for AI in understanding what needs to be done. And if you ever want to get a consultation or try a simulation, we're both here to help you and walk you through the rest of our solutions as well.
Yeah, see what scores you get.
All right, then. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day, good evening, good night. And
Thanks,
we'll see you.
Thanks, everyone.